As you know, the meaning of yoga traditionally means union. Union with who or what, as the word is used traditionally, it's the union with your source, whatever your word is for source. And the road that takes you to your source is what gives it the name of Karma Yoga, Kriya Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Depending on the temperament of the seeker, he is more drawn to the path of devotion or wisdom. And if he's a compulsive doer and he can't sit still, Karma Yoga is the path of doing. And Kriya Yoga is the path of steps and stages. Tantric Yoga, in other words, aimed at activating chakras, etc., etc., taking you to different so-called spiritual dimensions. So before lunch, we were busy with the word karta or doer, and Karma Yoga is ideally suited for somebody who likes to work and be busy or creative and putting things together. And the goal of Karma Yoga is to perform everything in a detached way. In other words, I'm not concerned about the results of my action, whether they are sweet or sour. I'm dedicated to the action and I'm not attached to the results. If I'm attached to the results, then it muddies it. It brings the person, it brings the karta into the picture. Detachment is probably the highest state. It's that state of serenity of being where there is no doer left. In Karma Yoga, it's just the yoga of action. Kriya Yoga, it's just the yoga of ritual karma. Ritual karma, it's a subset of Karma Yoga, but it's aimed at a purpose of awakening, kundalini, chakras, etc. Now, can there be doing without a notion of a karta? Well, that's what Karma Yoga is about. Is there a doer present in Karma Yoga? Yes, but I'm not identified with the action. You've heard that expression from the Buddha, events happen, deeds get done, but there is no individual doer thereof. There's still a karta, but I'm not identified with it. I'm detached from the notion of a doer, but doing gets done. But there's no notion of me, the doer. It's almost as if the karta has subsided into the witnesser. There's no notion of I am doing this. It's a state of things happen, deeds get done, but there is no individual doer thereof, because there is no karta that's acting in the old way. It's a very, very, very high state, the state of detachment, which is that state peculiar to Bhagavan. Whatever the result of an act is, that's up to destiny, it's up to God, it's none of my business. I'm unattached to the fruit. And the opposite of that karma yogi mentality is the perfectionist. Who can never leave it behind. She's got to keep going back and adjust and tweak and make it better and better, because he's not free of attachment to the outcome. He's exceptionally attached to the outcome. So on the one end, you've got detachment. On the other end, you've got the perfectionist. And if anybody has been through a phase of perfectionism, it grips you like it's never perfect enough. And then I can't leave it behind. I'm attached to the fruit. And I want it to be the best possible fruit. Things happen, events happen, deeds get done. But in truth, there is no individual doer thereof. Quite the opposite to the human experience. But in Bhagavan's language, is there a karta that has free will? And if the karta has no free will, that might be detachment. It's as if there's a part of your mind called ahamkara, which is very keen to usurp responsibility for what consciousness flows through it. And it says, I did. And clearly that is the surface I. The mental I, the usurper, the karta, and the perfectionist, but not detached. Very much invested in the action. And that's not detachment. I have no interest in the outcome. Events happen, things get done. There's no individual doer thereof. Quoting Buddha. Which is not dissimilar to Bhagavan. There is no such thing as free will. Events happen. And when that flow of consciousness flows through an aspect of the mind, it's that aspect of the mind that claims ownership, which is the culprit. It usurps what belongs to the whole. It usurps it. It's mine. The collection box in the church goes round, and instead of putting money in, you put your hand in, but you take a whole lot out. This is mine. And in a young child, is there any notion of a karta, a doer? Not at all. Things just happen in this life. Doesn't plan, doesn't think, doesn't reflect. Is certainly not a perfectionist. And it makes life so easy. It's a life of detachment. But there's still a karta. I'm not identified with the karta. I'm not identified with the kar. And if you're not identified, you are not that. And that is detachment. Alles klar. Is so? Do you need to just hang on a second? There's no volume here. Okay, start again.
Is equanimity akin to or a product of detachment?
I think, if anything, it's a wonderful run-up. Because equanimity is a state of equipoise, equal-mindedness between this outcome or that outcome. I don't know if it's totally free of a karta, though. It's certainly a step in the right direction, as I would see it. But here again, how are you using the word equanimity with a capital E or a small e? So if it's with the small e, there's a doer there. May even be posing as detachment. I'm just pulling your leg. So equanimity is certainly less invested than the karta or the karma yogi. So if I'm detached about the outcome, if it's coming from the traditional place that it was originating from in India, it's akin to the unmoved mover. You're not affected. Like that Harajan lady, detached. And you can't believe it because the one who can't believe it is the one that's always attached to doing. And looking at this, can't put two and two together. Totally detached. So much so that even that one apparently suffering. And then one says that's pretty cool, pretty callous, pretty hard. Who's saying that? Is the karta in the other one? Because I take myself and identify myself with action and my deeds. And when I see somebody who's not having that, it can be a bit confusing for one who is a karta and a doer. When the Buddha was referring to that remark, is that opposing the notion that Bhagavan has a free will, or is it saying the same thing? Okay, just to remind you, Bhagavan and Einstein said there is no free will. And Buddha is saying events happen, things get done, but there is no individual doer. So this a confirmation in different words that there is no free will. What's meant to happen will happen. If it happens through the medium of this equipment, I'm totally detached unless that aspect of mind is still active and it wants to claim the doership. So equanimity is very close to that, equal-mindedness, whether this or that. It's a state of equipoise. In other words, not resisting what is happening and not trying to encourage what's not happening. It's poised in between, okay, with whether it's this or that. It can also be equanimity between different actions. There's a state of equanimity between this type of attitude and action and that one. It's a state of nice balance between them. What's another word for equanimity? What's a synonym? It's not one that anybody in the waking dream would associate as a synonym, because indifference in the waking dream has got quite a callous connotation. If you're indifferent, and if somebody at street level says, I find you to be quite indifferent, do you take that as a supreme compliment? No. It's taken almost as an insult. You're indifferent. In other words, you're callous, you're thick-skinned. You're not getting it. Hmm? Yeah, neutrality, balance, harmony, all of these words come forward. Pulling down a hard truth could be when he or she has done something and it didn't quite work out like they expected. Then there will be some reason why it happened this way and not that way, meaning they still are touched by how the outcome was. But if they've done it, whatever it is, and walked away and never looked back over their shoulder, it's as if it's gone. And there's no residue because there is no karta. Okay, talk to me from there. Right. Anything else on that? And it certainly looks in the waking dream to be indifference, because that and that always look alike, unless you can feel into the difference. Anybody would like to bring up a subject or something they'd like to talk about? Yes?
I would like to know what would the outcome be of the highest state of detachment? Would it help others to step back in their alignment, or is it just to help you to be in the flow?
It doesn't involve any of that. The one who's in that detached state is above all notions of thought and action and doing. They're residing in what I would call serenity of being. Detachment. But to somebody looking at their equipment, they might find the equipment is being quite energetic. In other words, there could be quite a lot of doing happening, working in a workshop or cooking. But if the one is detached from that, it's only one who is detached that can recognize that detachment. To someone who doesn't know that, it will look like indifference. The first and the third always have this look alike, but they're worlds apart. What else is there to that? Or anything else to that?
So basically, it's just you being in your space or that peace that you have, and that's it.
You've gone free of the karta through grace, through practice, through effort.
And basically, then nothing's got a hold on you.
Sorry, nothing's got?
So basically, then nothing on the outside will have a hold on you, and you will just have that peace. And
I'm not going to be using that. The hall. Are we going to use the hall? For dinner. Is there a problem if somebody else wanted? Okay. And Edson, did Edson get his lunch? Are you done? Did he? Okay, thank you. And we'll be finished here at 8:30. Thank you. Say that again. I've forgotten what you said.
so, as I understand, it's like something up, nothing outside has a hold on you, and you're in your space.
I want to say something here, but I'm not quite sure if it's correct to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Something might have a hold on you, but you're not registering as doing anything. You're free of any notion of doership. You might be aware that something is hanging onto your form or your mind, but you are beyond that. You're detached from that. Whatever that is, you're detached from it. It can be a pleasant scene, a drama scene, an attached scene, but you are detached from it. In that sense, you're above it, not connected to it, and therefore not identified with it. If I remain unidentified with everything and everyone, I'd be in a state of detachment.
Thank you. I think I'm getting it now. Thank you.
Okay. And if we're very warm-hearted and social creatures, it sounds a little bit, if not a lot, dry. But maybe it's exactly the opposite. This is the lesson of the waking dream. Laziness can often pose as detachment. I'm detached. Why are you still thinking about attachment? Why are you even talking about it? Is it good to be attached or detached from your children? Very thin ice I'm walking on you now. So I won't say anything more. I keep quiet. But I think you know what I would say. And isn't that giving them the greatest freedom without them knowing it? Than holding on to expectations of what they're going to do and giving them advice, and you set them free. Subconsciously, you give them all the space they need. Or do you want a parent that's fully invested in you? Both have got positive sides. Depends what you're hungering after. The one or the other will be more appealing. But detachment doesn't mean there's no karta. I'm detached from the karta. And if you're detached, it has no effect on you. And you can just notice. No, I won't go there. Is there anything else anybody would like to say? Or a new topic, a new subject? I'm not crazy about talking about something that's not here and now and in the room. So if there's something here, it'd be nice if you just said it, shared it, whatever. What path are you people on? You still tell me. Then I can try and adapt it to your path. If it's touched me at some point, this topic, then next time there is a bit of a whirlpool in my life, I can just pause for a few seconds and reflect on who is the karta that's taking over ownership of all of this as if it's happening by his divine will instead of the divine will. Have I claimed ownership again? And in the waking dream, one has to say yes. Unless I become acutely aware of it, and gradually the idea starts to wash away and replaced by there is no free will. Events happen. Things get done. If that is the highest truth, then in the highest truth there is no karta, but the one, whatever that is. And events flow through me. I don't do them. If I didn't have that aspect of mind that claimed ownership, events would flow cleanly through with no coloring, not colored by me. And then that's clean. There's no motives, there's no vested interest. I'm just working for the sake of working, regardless of the outcome. I am a karma yogi. In my devotion are my hands. And with these hands, I devote everything I make to the one. And whatever I offer to the one, I don't scrutinize whether it's sweet or sour. I surrender all, the good parts and the bad parts, to the one. There's no discernment. And that's not too far removed from thy will be done through me. May I be the channel of your love. May I be a channel of etc., etc. And I would be a pure, clean, undistorting channel if it didn't flow through that part of mind. And an animal doesn't have that part of mind. So what flows through it is clean. There is no agenda, and there's no attachment to premeditated fruits of my action. And that would be equanimity. In the sense, treating the so-called good and bad as irrelevant. If I'm detached, actually irrelevant. And if I am detached, it's irrelevant what's in front of me. I'm detached, I'm not connected, I'm not associated with it. So whatever it looks like to somebody who is attached, as I talk about that horrid John lady, and right next to her, what's happening, there's no identification with it. No association. Detached from it. Wouldn't it be nice if we could detach from world events and all the stuff that goes on in our lives and our friends' lives? If you could detach. And then immediately one thinks, no, it's too cold and hard. I want to be involved. I want to be supportive. I want to. And the karta can't get out of the way. It reappears more subtly, but it's still the doer. And it's not wrong and it's not right, please. There's no right and wrong here. It's a matter of consciousness. If I am doing good for others, that's a wonderful part of karma yoga. Because the doing in karma yoga is centered around doing for the sake and in accord with other. Emphasis is on other, not me. So the doer is there, but doing it for the sake of other and for other, and not for me and a vested outcome. And if one has to look at the pain, the suffering in any human being, it has one root cause: attachment. You're attached to this thing, this person, this job, or the experience, and it's not giving you what you had expected or wanted. But if you are detached from it, it doesn't matter. Now, which is the one that's causing drama and stories? It's obviously attachment. But the path of Karma Yoga is detachment. And it's also referred to as dispassion. There's no passion there. There's no rajas there. Rajas means a doer. So there's not a doer there in the rajasic sense. And dispassion is Viagra. Dispassion. There's no passion in it. Not the same thing as Viagra. That's the antonym for Vairagya. There's just nothing in it. There's just nothing happening. And paradoxically, it's in that nothing happening that the most intense activity can happen. Somebody mentioned it today. During the Second World War, when people came across Sri Ramana Maharshi, and everybody raving so highly about the saint, and these people, maybe politicians, were all concerned about the Second World War. And if he is such a rishi and such a wada, why doesn't he do something about this war? This is the thinking. But he was detached from that. What war? Not in that sort of innocent, stupid sense, but this is what's happening. It's the play of God. It's Leela. I'm not connecting to that. It is what it is. And all is well with my soul. Yeah? Yeah.
Patrick, could one-pointedness on a higher octave eventually result in detachment? It would be a good practice.
And part of one-pointedness is completing cycles. Very important part, because that is, in the waking dream, what disperses me is an incomplete cycle. And then I'm here and there. But if I'm one-pointed and I'm fully with one thing at a time, closure is happening. And as closure happens, everything goes quieter and more collected on the inside. And it's possible that it can take me into that state of detachment. It's not guaranteed, but it could take me there. And that's the joke. The intense activity of the mind can actually take you out of mind. It's always that funny paradox. Wat wel, stelletjie. So to bring this back to the theme of the pot always changing and the clay never sleeping. The karta is always changing. How does the karta feel at 9:15 after hearing good news on the phone? How is the karta 2 hours later when it gets its summons? So the karta is in a landscape of change. The one is detached. Nothing's changing. So what is it in us that changes, and what is it in us that is beyond change? We know what the mind is. That's the part that's involved in change. And what's that part that's free of all change? Can anybody have a word for that? We've only used it 6 times today. What is that part that is impervious and unaware of change? Pure, pristine consciousness, uncontaminated by thought and thinking, which is my native state. And that is beyond the karta. It's abiding in that detached emptiness, where things happen, but there's no individual doer thereof. The space of Bhagavan. There's no doer there. But there is a karta, but the karta is not identified. If you don't identify with your body, it's very different than when you are identified with your body and with anything or anyone else. And just think of that word identity, identify. Means you're more than just close to the other person. You have identified with that person. And then what about you? You've identified with that person, but where are you in the unidentified state? Which is truer to you? You in the identified state? Or is that the state that changes? Yeah, I'm identified with that and this is how I feel. I'm identified with that and that's how I feel. So when I'm identified, it's a life of change and roller coaster. All vested in interest and work and doing. But you can still do, but not attached to the doer anymore. Then deeds happen without there being an individual karta, because I'm not identifying with it. If I'm standing in front of a TV camera, I'm very conscious of the doer. All eyes are on me and what I'm going to do next. It's a bit more difficult to be detached in the beginning. But if there has been, prior to this moment, closure of a significant cycle, and the closure was done methodically, mindfully, and you clearly came to the end of something. Cleaned out the garage. The last bit of junk is out. And how do you feel? You feel pretty fine. Who did that? It was the karta. But either the karta is aware of the karta, or it's happening effortlessly. In the spirit of Buddha, things happen, things get done. Both have a karta. One is identified with the karta and the other one not. But the more I am exposing myself to awe, wonder, and reverence in nature, so that detachment takes on a different quality. I won't call it empathy, oneness, intimacy. I don't quite know what the word is. Because in nature there is no conscious karta, that I'm aware of anyway. It just happens. This is the mystery. This is the magic that Einstein was referring to. Everything is a mystery. Because who is the ultimate karta through which all of these miracles are happening? Is the karta in the flower? No. Is it in the tree? And how many kartas are there? Okay, in the waking dream. Well, we can start counting. Am I indispensable? No, you don't know what to do with it now. Because it's got so many different layers to it in society. From an ultimate perspective, you had no choice but to be here. So were you dispensable? You just had to be here. And you are. And did you have any say? Mhm. Here, I mean on this planet, not in this room particularly. And who pulled you here to this set of circumstances? Was it free choice? Or was it celestial divine intelligence dressed as astrology? Because that is one of the sciences of the Vedas. How my life is molded by the latitude, the longitude, and the GMT. When I entered this plane, everything was set out very clearly. And it was set out thousands of years ago that when this date someone is born, then that is exactly what's going to happen to him. And it's fascinating how accurate that can be. And that puts a whole new slant on free will. If there was such a thing as free will, there wouldn't be astrology or astronomy. Well, astronomy, yes, but not astrology. So even the Rajas and the rulers of India would consult their astrologers before they made any decisions. And that's what all priests in India are very familiar with. And that's why if you want to get married, you'll go to the Brahmin priests and you'll say, what is an auspicious day for this one and that one to come together? Now, that's not in Western culture too much. But if it's in a culture that says there's no free will, everything is predestined, then when is the most auspicious predestined time? So that I can go along with it. And they are adamant that if it happens in an inauspicious way on an inauspicious date, it doesn't bode or flow as well as if it had been. And none of that has anything to do with the karta. The karta is the one that decides. Astrology is saying this is how it is. This is when you were born. Sorry, we can't change it. You can work on yourself and modify tendencies, but this is what you came in with. This is your lunchbox that God packed for you. Put special little things that were meant for you only. There's a few chocolates in as well. I remember at school always looking into the other one's lunchbox. What did you get? And he's looking into my lunchbox. What have you got? What is there in this that's relevant to my way forward? Firstly, don't take yourself seriously. Secondly, don't take yourself seriously. And thirdly, hold things lightly, because you weren't the doer. In truth, whatever's meant to happen happens regardless of any karta. But when I identify with the karta, I think that's when you pick up karma. If you're not identified with the doer, how can karma accrue to you? How can karma accrue if you are detached? If you're indifferent, the karma could be horrendous. But when you're detached, what karma? So just bear in mind, it's the kar that's got karma. It's the pot. Okay, if I bump it a little bit, then something will happen to it. It won't be the same anymore. Whoops, it nearly happened. And then where's pot? Actually, it's a pity it didn't fall. Huh? This is the last lesson, so it can afford to fall. Swan song. You've served us well. So what is this to take home? A, what am I hanging on to guilt or blame or shame for? If deeds happen, things get done, but there's no individual doer. If you anesthetize the mind, there would be no blame and shame, because there would be no stories. When I'm not detached, I'm in storyland. Means waking dream. When I'm detached, what stories? There's no notion of anything happening. And if it's happening, it's not happening through me, the karta. And that would be how Bhagavan would see it. So when there is an event in my life and it evokes some emotion or thought or whatever, I can recall one thing. Did I do this? Or am I the doer? Or could this have been different? Now, how does things could have been different tie in with no free will? Could they be different if there's no free will? Outwardly not, but its effect on me might be different. Yeah, but what were you wanting to say? Okay. So when there is any tendency to feel out of sorts about what I had done or shouldn't have done, or entering into a story, it's good to be able to see I've just gone into my mind again. There is no ground for this. Drop it. Detach from it. It's all an illusion. But now I get clever. I'm in tamas. And I hear this. Oh, that sounds nice. I always knew I was right. Sitting on my bum all day. Now even the saint is telling, just sit and be quiet. When two people hear the same thing, it lands differently because they are different. And what each one identifies with is what will register. If I'm not identified with it, it won't register. So if you're not identified with anything, you'd be detached. If you didn't identify with your grandchildren, you'd be detached. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not speaking socially and waking dream now, I'm talking about the highest truth. It's good to be identified with your children. I mean, this goes right against the human behavior, conditioning, and the waking dream. But if you were not attached, wouldn't you be granting them far more freedom of expression than if you were attached to them? Because if somebody is attached to you, then what comes with that attachment? It's not totally open, void, and clean. There's something in it. To be detached means not subject to anything or anybody. I'm free in that moment. I'm detached. And I'm meaning it not in the negative sense. So if I am touched or moved or buffeted in the day, I can recall. Okay. Who or what is being buffeted here? To be the karta, the one who's identified with something. And then I can smile and say, idiot. Detachment, because it looks like indifference, nobody goes there. Nobody wants to go there. It's the last place a karta wants to go. It's the last place an ego would like to hang out, is in a void or in an area like that. But offer the same job to the soul, and it will say yes and jump in, but not the mind. Huh? Session 3 ends at 16:15. That seems to be the time. Push this back. The Edge newspaper. It's on the edge. Okay. What are we going to do with that little chap? Make clay, yeah. Throw it against the wall, return it to clay, take the pot out. You first have to find the pot before you can take it out.
You can use it for flowers.
Dry flowers, yeah.
Fresh